Every superpower believes it will last forever, until the 100-year clock runs out. Every empire rises in triumph, glows in confidence, and then, without fail, descends into silence. The names change. The pattern does not. Spain, Britain, America. 3 empires separated by centuries, each certain that history had ended with them. Each now remembered as a warning, because history doesn't move in straight lines. It turns in circles, slow, predictable, merciless. Like the swing of a pendulum, it ticks through the same stages again and again. Birth, ascent, glory, decay, collapse, rebirth. And though every age swears it is different, the rhythm never changes. It is the rhythm of power. It is the rhythm of time itself. The question is not whether the pattern is real. It is whether we can hear the ticking before the final strike of midnight. And if you listen carefully, you can already hear it now. The cycle begins. Century. Spain rose from a patchwork of kingdoms to become the first global superpower. In the 19th, Britain ruled the oceans and the markets of the world. In the 20th, America inherited the mantle and crowned itself leader of the free world. Each held dominance for roughly a century. Each burned bright enough to believe it had transcended history. Each then faded, for the same quiet reasons. The rise begins with scarcity and faith. People still remember hunger. They still believe in duty. They work, they innovate, they risk everything because they have nothing to lose. It is the age of builders. The fall begins when that memory is lost. When children grow up surrounded by abundance and mistake it for normal life. When discipline turns into entitlement, and debt becomes easier than effort. That is the moment the clock starts counting down. Stage 1. The Rise. Year 0. 30. In every story of power, the first act is the same. Struggle. And struggle, not comfort, creates greatness. Spain's beginning was forged in fire. The Reconquista had barely ended. The kingdom was young, hungry, and united by faith. While others mourned the fall of Constantinople, Spain looked outward. The ocean was a mystery, but mystery is the fuel of empire. When Columbus returned in 1493, he carried not just gold, but an idea that the world was larger than anyone had imagined. The Spanish crown seized that idea and never let go. Armadas crossed the Atlantic, conquistadors carved new provinces, and within decades, treasure galleons were unloading unimaginable wealth in Seville. From the silver mines of Potosi to the spice routes of Manila, the Spanish flag became the symbol of divine destiny. For a brief, blinding moment, Spain owned the world. Britain's rise came later, quieter, but more enduring. Where Spain conquered by sword, Britain conquered by trade. Coal and iron were its weapons. The Industrial Revolution turned smoke into wealth, and wealth into power. Factories roared, railways stitched the island together, and ships bearing the Union Jack began circling the globe. London became the heartbeat of a new economy. One measured not in gold, but in productivity. The empire was self-made, driven by inventors, merchants, and engineers who believed improvement was a moral duty. It was the age of steam, of discipline, of relentless progress. And then came America, born from rebellion, tempered by frontier life, and energized by immigration. The United States entered the 20th century with a confidence that bordered on prophecy. It built skyscrapers, automobiles, and dreams. Electric light banished the dark. Flight shrank the continents. The assembly line turned mass labor into mass prosperity. By the 1920s, the American experiment had become the world's fascination. Its rise was powered not by monarchy or empire, but by an idea that freedom itself could be productive. In these early decades, the pattern is pure. Innovation surges, unity holds, sacrifice is honored. There is belief. Belief that tomorrow will justify today's hardship. And that belief is what carries nations upward. Yet hidden within that same belief is the seed of arrogance. Because when success finally arrives, people start to think they deserve it. And that is where every empire's story begins to turn. The peak years. 30, 70 years. Every empire has a moment when the air itself seems charged with certainty. The people feel it in the rhythm of commerce, in the confidence of their leaders, in the ease with which the world bends toward them. They mistake that pulse for permanence. They believe history has finally chosen its favorite child. For Spain, that glow came in the middle of the 16th century. Galleons glided into Seville fat with silver, their hulls so heavy the decks creaked under the weight. The wealth of half a planet poured into one kingdom. Markets swelled, palaces multiplied. Painters, poets, and priests called it divine proof of favor. And the world watched in awe as Spain purchased glory with the gold of others. But abundance dulls the edge of effort. Why invent when treasure ships dock every month? Why manufacture when you can import? Within a generation, Spain's workshops went silent. Inflation devoured the gains of conquest, and the easy money that had made it rich also made it dependent. The empire forgot how to create. It learned only how to consume. Britain's century shone differently. Its wealth came not from plunder, but production. And its people wore that distinction, with pride. The pound sterling became the spine of global trade. The British Navy, its enforcing hand. Factories pulsed in Manchester, smokestacks lit the skies of Birmingham, and the docks of London hummed like the arteries of the world. At its height, 1 out of every 4 human beings lived under the Union Jack. The empire was so vast that daylight was never absent from its soil. And the British believed that meant the darkness of decline would never touch them. They built schools in India, railways in Africa, banks in every capital, convinced they were exporting civilization itself. But behind the marble facade, the same fatigue was forming. Debt crept upward. Wars on distant continents drained coffers. The moral certainty that had powered the early industrialists began to wane. By the time the First World War erupted, Britain was rich in history, but poor in humility. Victory in 1918 masked insolvency. The pound staggered beneath the weight of empire, and London's throne of commerce quietly began to wobble. Then came America's turn, the golden century of modern myth. When the smoke of the Second World War cleared, every rival lay in ruin. American factories stood untouched, its fields fertile, its currency backed by more gold than the rest of the world combined. From 1945 onward, half of global production flowed through its borders. The dollar became not just money, but memory, the unit by which post-war reality was measured. Families bought homes, highways stitched the continent. The television sold optimism by the hour. The nation that had once clawed its way out of depression now flooded the world with abundance. To most, it seemed that history's long climb had ended, that the summit had been reached, and the view would last forever. But gold peaks glittered just before the slide. The Korean War, then Vietnam, turned prosperity into deficit. Imports outpaced exports. Inflation whispered through the 1960s. By 1971, Nixon severed the dollar from gold, and the world slipped quietly into the age of paper promises. The United States still looked strong, but the foundation had changed. It was no longer wealth that sustained the system, it was confidence. And confidence, once cracked, cannot be repaired by decree. Every empire enters this stage, the illusion of invincibility. Spain believed divine destiny would preserve it. Britain believed commerce and reason would. America believed technology and democracy made it immortal. But the laws of time are older than belief. They do not pause for innovation, nor yield to optimism. At the peak, citizens confuse privilege with principle. They forget that prosperity is rented, not owned, and rent must always be paid in discipline. When that discipline fades, the countdown quickens. From the outside, the empire still shines. Inside, corrosion spreads unseen through its institutions, its money, its will. This is the hinge between greatness and decay, the quiet, dangerous middle of the cycle when everyone feels safe. And it is in that silence, not in crisis, that the seeds of collapse are sown. The decline, years 70, 100. Decline is rarely visible at first. It does not announce itself with thunder. It creeps in softly, through comfort, distraction, and the small compromises that seem harmless at the time. The streets are still busy, the markets still open, the anthem still sung. But something subtle has changed. The purpose that once united a nation begins to fragment into 1,000 private hungers. The story of us dissolves into millions of stories of me. Economists can graph the curve. Historians can trace the parallels. But ordinary citizens simply feel it. As unease. They sense that money buys less, that leaders sound emptier, that truth has become negotiable. These are not random symptoms. They are the heartbeat of decline. The first sign is monetary. When productivity slows, governments choose the easy cure. More credit, more paper, more illusion. Spain drowned Europe in silver. Britain flooded the world with debt. America printed dollars faster than it built value. The logic is always the same. We can borrow today, tomorrow we'll be richer. But tomorrow never pays. It inherits the bill with interest. By the 1970s, the United States was printing money to fund everything, from war to welfare to Wall Street dreams. The promise of hard work was replaced by the promise of liquidity. And as dollars multiplied, meaning thinned. Inflation is not merely a price phenomenon, it is a moral one. It tells a society that numbers matter more than effort. The second sign is military overstretch. At their peak, empires confuse presence with purpose. Spain fought wars on 6 fronts. Britain garrisoned a quarter of the planet. America built 800 bases and called it security. Each empire believed that peace could be purchased by perpetual motion. But every ship abroad is a bridge neglected at home. Every faraway victory a wound of debt unseen. The third sign is division. When wealth concentrates and trust evaporates, citizens retreat into tribes. Spain turned its fury inward. Inquisition and rebellion tearing provinces apart. Britain split along class lines. Strikes paralyzed its cities. America's division is digital, ideological, spiritual. A civil Cold War fought through screens. No empire survives once its citizens stop seeing themselves as one people. The fourth sign is productivity decay. At first it looks like sophistication. An economy moving from industry to finance, from making to managing. But behind the new jargon hides a loss of substance. Factories close, skills vanish. Speculation replaces creation. In Spain, it was gold fever. In Britain, the city eclipsed the workshop. In America, derivatives eclipse design. When money breeds faster than ideas, collapse is already on the schedule. And the fifth sign, denial. No leader admits decline while it is happening. They speak of soft landings, temporary adjustments, recoveries just around the corner. Each generation believes its crisis is unique. Each uses the same medicine that caused the disease. More credit, more control, more illusion. So the empire drifts on, anesthetized by optimism. The currency weakens. The debt mounts. The institutions that once enforced order now manage decay. Citizens sense something slipping, but cannot name it. They fight over symbols while substance burns away. By the time Spain faced bankruptcy in 1590, the decline had been visible for decades. By the time Britain surrendered the pound's supremacy in 1945, the empire had been hollow for a generation. By the time America's debt crossed 30 trillion, the illusion of endless wealth had already broken. The end of every empire is not an explosion. It is exhaustion. An exhaustion of spirit that no budget or army can repair. Empires die the way stars do. Quietly, from the inside out, until one day, the light simply isn't there. Stage 4. Collapse and reset. Collapse begins slowly, then all at once. First the confidence breaks, then the system follows. For Spain it came when the silver stopped. Ships were sunk, mines ran dry, creditors demanded payment in gold that no longer existed. Within months, the richest nation in the world was bankrupt. Inflation wiped out savings, revolts spread, and the empire shrank into history. For Britain, it came after the Second World War. Though it stood among the victors, the cost of victory exceeded the treasure of the realm. The pound fell, colonies demanded independence, and within a single generation, the largest empire ever built had melted away. The seat of power crossed the Atlantic, and the world bowed to a new flag. For America, the process is quieter, but familiar. Its wars are fought with credit cards instead of swords. Its tribute extracted through debt instead of empire. Its rivals gather gold and commodities while its citizens gather notifications. Yet beneath the noise, the structure creaks. The same structural fatigue that marked every empire's twilight. History's tempo is steady. Roughly a century of dominance. Then the recalibration. Spain's height, 1500s to 1600s. Britain's 1800s to mid-1900s, America's 1945 to now. 80 years into its cycle, the symptoms align. Debt beyond comprehension, politics reduced to theater, faith in currency eroding. The clock that governs empires does not stop for technology or optimism. It simply ticks, and the ticks are getting closer together. But collapse is not only ruin, it is reset. Each fall clears the ground for something new. From Spain's ashes rose Britain's enterprise. From Britain's decline rose America's dynamism. And from America's coming fatigue will rise a successor. Perhaps not a single nation, but a network. A civilization of code and data rather than soil and flag. Every rebirth rewrites the form, but not the function. Power migrates to where energy, discipline, and belief still live. The lesson of time. Every empire believes it is the exception. Every generation whispers the same vow. This time will be different. But history keeps the receipts. It remembers every promise, every arrogance, every debt left unpaid. Spain believed God himself had guaranteed its reign. Britain believed the laws of commerce were eternal. America believes technology and democracy make it immune. Each believed they had transcended time. None did. The clock that governs civilizations is older than gold and older than kings. It measures not years but human nature, ambition, pride, fatigue. When ambition burns hottest, nations climb. When pride blinds, they freeze. When fatigue spreads, they fall. You can see the pattern not only in economies but in hearts. At the beginning there is hunger. Men build cathedrals and railroads because they must. Their children inherit order and take it for granted. Their grandchildren inherit ease and demand more of it. By the fourth generation, the memory of struggle has faded completely. They forget that prosperity was not a birthright but a miracle of effort. And when effort ends, miracles cease. So the cycle turns, from unity to comfort, from comfort to entitlement, from entitlement to decline. And when the decline has run its course, something unexpected happens. Clarity returns. Hardship resets the memory of what matters. That is how civilizations renew themselves. Collapse is not the enemy. Forgetfulness is. The fall is the cure for the disease of certainty. Listen to the sound of the modern age. A constant hum of distraction. Screens replace reflection. Consumption replaces creation. Debt replaces discipline. The empire still stands, but its soul drifts. Its citizens are rich in opinion, poor in meaning. They know prices but not value, rights but not duty, abundance but not gratitude. And still the leaders promise, one more stimulus, one more election, one more technological miracle. But the problem is not in the machines or the markets. It is in the memory. A people that forgets how to build cannot be saved by innovation alone. History does not end. It resets. The question is always the same. Who remembers what built the world the last time it fell apart? Somewhere now, in a place still restless and poor, that memory is alive again. A new generation is working, saving, believing, as earlier empires once did. They study our mistakes. They trade intangible things, resources, labor, production. They hoard gold while we print promises. They teach discipline while we debate comfort. They are not yet called an empire, but they will be. Because power always flows toward those who still believe in the cost of it. The 100-year clock never stops. It does not pity or punish. It simply balances. When debt exceeds value, it resets. When noise exceeds truth, it resets. When arrogance exceeds wisdom, it resets. And the reset always feels like collapse to those who have forgotten the rhythm. Perhaps this is the deepest prophecy of all, that every ending is mercy in disguise, an invitation to remember. The fall of one order feeds the birth of another, and the ashes of the old become the soil of the new. So when you hear the phrase, the end of the American century, do not imagine apocalypse. Imagine equilibrium. Imagine history exhaling after a long breath. The wheel turns, the light shifts, the center moves elsewhere. It has happened 1,000 times before, and will happen 1,000 times again. For the individual, the lesson is simple. Build what lasts. Hold value that is real. Seek truth that outlives trends. Because while nations rise and fall, character endures. And those who keep faith through the collapse become the architects of the next dawn. Every empire begins in fire and ends in ash. From ash, fire is born again. That is the law of time, the silent heartbeat of civilization. The clock is still ticking. The hour is late, but the story is not over. The 100-year clock never stops, and right now, it is almost midnight.